Perfect. So in this webinar, we are going to look at the EHCP tracking that is now available within iASEND. And this is the EHCP is available on all accounts. It's not any additional charge, so you should all have access to it. There are some elements of the EHCP subject that are only available for admin users, and that is mainly the Manage EHCP. So this is where you set everything up. So if you're not seeing that button, it would be to do with your access to the system and be meaning that you are a teacher user, not an admin user. So you do have to have admin rights to set it up, but you don't have to have admin rights to do any of the data entry or the iASEND evidence uploads, etc. So I'm kind of going to go through this in 3 stages. The first thing I'm going to go through is show you how to set up the EHCP subject. So it is the only subject within iASEND that comes completely blank, and therefore you need to build it bespoke for your pupils. Then we'll look at data entry, and we'll cover both enter assessments and iASEND evidence. And then we will look at some of the analysis pages that the EHCP subject will appear for. So the first thing that I'm going to talk you through is around pupil curriculums for EHCP. So like any other subject, you do need to assign the pupil curriculums. Now, the slight caveat for that is that for every other subject in iASEND, we tell you to put your pupils where they're working academically, not where they are in age range. However, when it comes to EHCP, their outcomes are normally, if not always, for the current end of key stage. So by the end of key stage 1 or by the end of foundation stage, etc. So we would recommend that you set their curriculum based on where they are kind of age band, so what kind of bracket they're fitting within. And so what I mean by that is if your pupil is in an early years setting, you'd be setting them the S curriculum. If they're a Key Stage 1 pupil, you'd be setting them the E. If they're Key Stage 2, N, and Key Stage 3, D. Now, this will help or impact the analysis pages, and it will also impact the letter that appears next to their name in the enter assessments. So just like anything else, so I am currently in year 1. So for these pupils, I would set them on the E curriculum. And this, isn't going to change for them until they move key stage. So it's kind of once it's set, you don't need to worry about it too much. So that's the first thing that you need to make sure you do is that any pupils that you're going to set an EHCP for, you set their curriculum to the right key stage. Then it's a case of building their EHCP outcomes on the system. And what you will notice is a couple of tables. The first is just reinforcing that idea around pupil curriculums. So it's just got that little note of where you should be putting them, and then a link to the pupil curriculums page. You will then find that when you come in for the first time, you've got 4 areas turned on. And we can see that by the little blue toggle indicating that they're on, and 4 that are turned off, and we can indicate those by the red toggle. Now yours will be called custom targets 1 or flexible targets 2, something along those, customable component. And that's because you've got the 4 key areas of the EHCP pre-built in the system. You can turn them off or turn them on, but you can't kind of edit, rename them. You can use the 3 little lines to reorder them if you want them in a slightly different order, but those 4 key areas are not editable in terms of name. We have then built the subject with some flexibility to allow for small step targets, to allow for any changes that happen regarding EHCPs, and just to give you some added flexibility. So with these, you can toggle them on or off using the little blue and red toggle, and then you can edit them. So to do that, you can click the little pencil icon, you can give it a full name, an abbreviated name, and then select which curriculum, so what age pupils this will be allowed for. So just to give you a couple of ideas, you can see here I've done it in a couple of different ways. So this is schools that have already started to use the subject, and some kind of feedback that they've given is that some schools are turning on 3, and they're calling them autumn, spring and summer, and they're putting kind of the more small step, so things that might be on an IEP or might be on a provision map, provision plan, and they're adding them in that way. Other schools are taking the 4 areas of the EHCP and then breaking those down into IEP targets or provision targets. Some schools are using it for if they've got any specialist teacher interaction for that pupil, and it's literally called specialist teacher targets or speech and language targets, etc. So with those 4, you can literally build them however you like. So in terms of them building the targets, it's a case of coming to the right curriculum. So again, if I'm looking at Key Stage 2 pupils, it'd be N, Key Stage 3 D, Key Stage 1 E, and Early Years S. You have then obviously got the A if applicable for any pupils. And you'll see when you hover over the curriculum and the area of the EHCP, you then get a little white pencil and a darker blue. If I click this, it will then take me to the statement bank for that area, and you can double check where you are at the top here. So I've got EHCP, the cognition and learning, and I'm on the N curriculum. And what will then appear is your table with your target bank. Now with this, you are able to apply one target to more than one pupils. So here I've obviously got a name within this, so that would need to be kind of specific, but I could just say the child or they will use, etc. And then you are able to kind of apply those to multiple pupils. You can reorder in the table, etc. as well, like you can on the previous one. So to add a target, you've either got the top or the bottom add new target button, which if you then click, will open up the setup box. So the top box is where you're going to copy and paste that EHCP outcome. You've got all the usual kind of text functions if you want to do anything in that sense. Then you've got a box called description. So within Enter Assessments, next to every objective, you've got a little magnifying glass. And for the statements pre-built within iASEND, within our subjects, it gives you kind of an idea of the pupil outcome that you would be looking for each statement. Within the EHCP, you can use this, you can not use this. It's very much down to you to give you an idea of, you know, kind of how you might use it. If I just go to one where I know I've got one set up. What you might do is use it to kind of give, you know, what are you looking for from the pupil, or how are you expecting the adult to behave in that situation, etc. So again, you can just leave it blank if there's nothing that you want to add, or you can add that description in. And then it asks you to give it some sort of display ID. So this is just to enable it to, you know, be referenced in any way, shape or form. So you can just give it a number, you can just give it a letter, or you could use sort of like the pupil initials and the number, and you know, that's kind of down to you, again, how you want that to look. The only thing you can't do is give more than one objective in one area. As she says that, we've got two of the same, so maybe you can. I won't say what I was going to say. So once you've added that, so if I say, just show you going test, 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 and another test, and just to show that you can copy and paste into this section as well, so it doesn't have to all be, you know, typed one by one. We press save and you can see it's now added on my list. If I want to move it around, I can, and it'll automatically reorder them. Any edits that I need to make, I can then use the edit button and it will take me back in and I can make any changes needed. I then need to assign it to the pupil or pupils that it's going to be relevant for. And I do that by the little pupil icon. I can either select a year group or all of my pupils will appear. I select their name and assign it to the pupil, and it will now show for that pupil. And I can do that for any children. And you can see now, obviously, multiple children are adding to my list. If I've added someone by mistake, or I don't want this target assigned to them anymore, I can unassign the pupil from the target and it will take them off. I then press close and carry on. I can use the little drop downs to move between the different components or to move between the curriculums, or you can use the little back arrow that will take you back to that original table. Now, as soon as you've built any of this, as soon as you've turned any of these on, it will then start to show within Enter Assessments. So, you know, it's kind of super quick in terms of showing within the system. So that's kind of the setup side of things. I'm just going to pause and just check whether anyone's got any questions around that before I move on to the data entry. And I will take silence as no questions. Perfect. Okay, so let's have a look at how we enter data for this subject then. So I'm going to start with kind of your generic enter assessments. So this is how anyone without iASEND evidence would add data or, one way of entering the data. So with this, you come to enter assessments and you come to EHCP. Now, what you will note is it will tell you here that you can only enter data for one pupil at a time with the EHCP subject. So within other subjects, I can select as many pupils as I want to enter data for. EHCP, you can only enter data one pupil at a time, and that is done on purpose. Only pupils that have got EHCPs will appear on this list. So if they haven't got any targets assigned, they won't show up on this list. So if you're expecting them to show, you need to go back and double check that you've actually set them some targets. And then it's the usual idea of selecting an assessment point and selecting the relevant curriculum. So for Jamie here, I can see he's working on the N, or he's an age N pupil. So I select the N curriculum. And then just like the rest of the subjects within iASEND, I will see all of the different areas, and then you can see my custom ones there as well. And I'm going to assess them in exactly the same way as any other subject. So I'm working across the depth of learning, and through time, I'd obviously want to be progressing the depth of how secure he is in those subjects. You've got all the usual flood fields as well, if needed. And just like with all of the other subjects within iASEND, once you've entered that data, you can use that print icon to take that information out of the system. So if you're going to an annual review or something like that, where you want to kind of see where they're working at the different areas, you can print this. It is just worth noting at this point that if your page looks like this, without the colour and the dots, it's nothing you've done wrong. You just need to find somewhere in your print options, there'll be something around background graphics that needs to be ticked for the colour coding and the dots to appear. You can also save it as PDF if you don't want to print it as well. So all the usual way in terms of entering data using the enter assessments option. The EHCP subject does also show within iASEND. So if you've got iASEND on your account, you are able to add observations against those EHCP targets. So if I select Jamie here, and let's just call it webinar, and I put my information in, I can share it or not share it with the parents. I can add whatever photos I like. And then when I come to select objectives, that EHCP subject is available. Now, when I click cognition and learning, lots of areas are going to appear because I play around with this child quite a lot. So he's got targets in different areas. But what will happen is you can see it's only going to show curriculums where there are statements available. So don't worry that lots are going to appear. That's just because of the way I've got things set up for this pupil. And you can see then that those statements appear. So I can just select the subject, and this will then go as a piece of evidence against that statement. Or I can actually move the assessment data depending on whether I'm ready to say that he's deepened that learning. I can then save that, and it will show when I look at observations for that pupil, and this one's got quite a few. So there we go. We can see the webinar one. If I go to his timeline, it will also show on there as well. So I can see I've got, whatever I've kind of recorded, and I can see that I've, selected that the objective for it to sit against. I can also then see that within enter assessments. So where you start to see camera icons, if I click that, I can now see I've got three statements, three objectives, three observations for this pupil. And if I click, it's going to take me directly to the observation that I've selected. And then the other thing you do have is you've got your evidence report. So if I want to see, how many I've got for cognition and learning, I can open that up, and I can see for Jamie I've got 2, other pupils I've got none. or I can show all areas, and I can look, right across his EHCP, where has he got lots of evidence and where might I need to build some more, build some more evidence for this pupil. So that's getting your information into the system, whether you're using Enter Assessments or iASEND evidence. We're now going to take a little look at the analysis that you can gain from this subject. Now, analysis for this subject is at an individual pupil level. And the reason that we've done this at the moment is because our dashboards and other pages like that rely on you setting an expectation in terms of progress attainment. And where this is a brand new subject and schools are still starting to use it, we can't give you that same guidance that we give for the other subjects at the moment. So at the moment, it is individual pupil analysis only. So you will be able to see the EHCP on pupil report, attainment and progress report, and on the target setting pages, and it will also show on their flight path. So any pupils with the EHCP subject selected, if my internet wants to let me move. There we go. So that EHCP subject will also show, let's turn that last year data off, and it will show its own line like any other. So on this pupil, it's here, so I can see that progress over time. And also I can see that progress over time on the table as well. So it will show on the flight path. It will also show on the pupil report. So just like any other subject, I can select 2 periods of time, making sure I've got pupil curriculum selected, and it is that subject right down at the bottom. So across the whole year, same idea: shallow worth 1, emerging 2, developing 3, deepening 4, functional 5. Obviously, we wouldn't really be using not applicable for this subject because they'll all be applicable. So for this pupil, based on those 23 statements, 115 is the maximum, 39 out of 115, 34%, 94 is 82%. Take one away from the other and give you that overall progress. Now, currently for this pupil, this is including all of those autumn statements, all of the kind of other ones I've set up. So if you want this data to show kind of just EHCP outcomes, you'd need to come to the Manage EHCP, and just while you're doing this bit of analysis, turn those 4 other areas off, and then your pupil report hopefully has kept up with us. Not with my internet today, it hasn't. There we go. It's now amended the information it's showing. So just to be aware, you can kind of have that flexibility with toggling those areas on and off as well. It would also show in the attainment and progress report. So if I select EHCP and I come to N and we're looking at that same pupil, you're going to see each of the areas, whether it's 4 or 8 or anywhere in between, depending on how many you've got turned on. And you can see for the attainment report, obviously attainment in each area. And then in the progress report, you'd be able to see the progress in each area. So again, you'd be able to see all those options. Now, we are in the process of adding a new option to the drop down here that will say all curriculums. So you will actually be able, on both the progress and attainment report, to get all pupils for one subject on one page. So you'd be able to have all of your EHCP pupils, regardless of curriculum, showing on one page as well. So that's coming. And then the last page that you can use this for is the target setting page. So I'm just going to filter to my year 5 pupils. And there we can see it at the bottom. So I can see, because I've got baseline and end of year selected here, that's what's showing. And I can set that end of year target wherever I want that to be, plus making those notes throughout the year using the notes page.